The gentle hum of rain against the tin roof drowned out the sound of his mother's sewing machine. Raj sat at their small wooden table, surrounded by textbooks borrowed from the school library, the pages worn from countless hands before his. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, casting just enough light for him to see his notebook, where he meticulously copied problems and solutions, determined not to waste the precious electricity they could barely afford. Their one-room home stood at the edge of town, far from the gleaming high-rises that punctuated the city skyline. On clear days, Raj could see those buildings from their doorstep, monuments to a world that seemed as distant as the stars. "It's late," his mother said, her voice soft but strained from exhaustion. Her fingers were calloused from years of tailoring clothes for the wealthy families in town. "You should sleep." Raj looked up, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. "Just one more chapter," he promised. At 17, he already understood that education was his only path forward, his only chance to pull them both from the clutches of poverty. The next morning, with the sun barely peeking over the horizon, Raj left for school in his faded uniform, patched so many times that little of the original fabric remained. He walked the 5 kilometers each way to save the bus fare, arriving early to use the school computers before classes began. His school, Greenfield High, served both the rich and poor of the city. The stark divide was visible everywhere, from the cars that dropped off students to the lunches they ate. Raj belonged firmly on one side of that divide, a fact that some of his classmates never let him forget. "Look who it is." The boy from the slums called out Vikram as Raj entered the computer lab. Vikram was the son of a tech company CEO, one of the wealthiest families in the region. "Still wearing your daddy's hand-me-downs? Oh wait, you don't have one." The word stung, but Raj kept his expression neutral as he took his seat. This was nothing new. Vikram and his friends, all children of business owners and executives, had been tormenting him for years. "Leave him alone," said Priya, one of the few students who'd always been kind to Raj. Her father taught mathematics at the university, placing her somewhere in the middle of the school's social hierarchy. "Why? He should know his place," Vikram sneered. "My father says people like him will always be working for people like us." As the teacher entered, silencing the exchange, Raj turned to his computer. He opened his programming assignment, losing himself in the elegant logic of code, where poverty and wealth didn't matter, only the clarity of thought. Mr. Sharma, the computer science teacher, paused behind Raj's chair. "Excellent work," he said quietly, examining the solution on the screen. "Have you considered the tech competition next month? The prize includes a scholarship." Raj hesitated. The competition required a registration fee, small for most, but significant for his family's budget. "I'll think about it, sir." After school, instead of heading home, Raj walked to the electronics repair shop where he worked part-time. The owner, Mr. Patel, had taught him to fix computers and phones, skills that complemented what he learned in school. "You're getting better than me," Mr. Patel said as Raj successfully recovered data from a seemingly dead laptop. "The customer will be very happy. I'm giving you a bonus today." The extra money was unexpected but desperately needed. At home, his mother had been coughing for weeks, working through her illness to meet deadlines for her clients. That night, Raj made a decision. He would use part of his bonus to enter the tech competition. The rest would go toward medicine for his mother. "You should save it," his mother protested weakly when he told her about the medicine. "We'll save more later," Raj replied, helping her to bed. "When I win that scholarship." The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Raj spent every spare moment working on his project, a mobile application that connected local tailors with customers needing alterations or repairs. He'd been inspired by watching his mother struggle to find consistent work. "You need to think bigger," Vikram said when he overheard Raj explaining his project to Mr. Sharma. "That's just a charity app for poor people. My team is building a virtual reality gaming system." Mr. Sharma frowned at Vikram before turning back to Raj. Sometimes the most meaningful innovations address real needs, not just wants. Continue with your vision. The day of the competition arrived. The convention center downtown was filled with students from schools across the region, many with elaborate displays and polished presentations. Raj stood beside his simple poster, wearing the cleanest shirt he owned, which his mother had carefully ironed that morning. When the judges, executives from major tech companies, reached his station, Raj spoke with quiet confidence about his application. He explained how it could create a marketplace for skilled laborers who lacked resources to advertise their services. This isn't just theoretical, he explained. I've already connected 5 tailors with over 30 customers in our test phase. The tailors have seen an average income increase of 40%. The judges asked pointed questions about his business model, scalability, and technical implementation. Raj answered each one, drawing on his practical experience at the repair shop and the countless hours he'd spent studying business concepts online. Across the hall, Vikram's team demonstrated their virtual reality system with flashy graphics and sound effects that drew crowds of spectators. Their display table was decorated with expensive equipment and professional banners bearing their family company logos. As the judges deliberated, Raj sat alone, watching the other competitors with their supportive parents and teachers. Mr. Sharma had wanted to attend but was covering classes for another teacher. His mother had offered to come, but her cough had worsened, and Raj had insisted she rest. The judges have reached their decision, announced the competition director. The crowd fell silent. This year's 3rd place goes to Greenfield High's virtual reality team, the director said. Vikram and his friends stepped forward, looking disappointed at not winning 1st place. 2nd place goes to. Raj held his breath, Northern Academy's Renewable Energy Project. 1st place was the only one that included the scholarship. Without it, Raj's hopes of attending university would remain just dreams. And 1st place, with an unprecedented unanimous decision from our judges, goes to Raj Sharma from Greenfield High for the Community Skills Marketplace application. For a moment, Raj couldn't move. Around him, the crowd applauded politely, though many were unfamiliar with his project. The judges were smiling at him, gesturing for him to come forward. As he walked to the stage, legs trembling, he caught sight of Vikram's shocked face. For once, the wealthy boy had no cutting remark, no dismissive laugh. Instead, there was just disbelief, and perhaps, the faintest glimmer of respect. The lead judge handed Raj the award and scholarship certificate. "Young man," she said into the microphone, "your application addresses a real market gap while empowering skilled workers. It's exactly the kind of innovation our industry needs. We'd like to offer you an internship at Horizon Tech this summer, in addition to your scholarship." As applause filled the convention center, Raj thought of his mother, who would soon be able to rest her tired hands. He thought of their tiny home, which had felt like a prison but had taught him the value of resourcefulness. And he thought of all the nights he'd spent studying by that single light bulb, believing that someday, somehow, his efforts would illuminate a brighter future. The bus ride home felt surreal. Raj clutched the scholarship certificate in one hand and the internship offer letter in the other. For the first time, he'd allowed himself the luxury of public transport, too overwhelmed by emotions to make the long walk home. His mind raced with possibilities. The scholarship would cover his university tuition completely. The summer internship at Horizon Tech came with a stipend that was more money than his mother made in 3 months of sewing. Life was about to change. When he pushed open the door to their small home, his mother was waiting, her thin face anxious. "What happened?" she asked, her voice raspy from coughing. Instead of answering, Raj simply handed her the paperwork. She squinted in the dim light, slowly reading the details before her eyes widened in disbelief. "You did it," she whispered, tears forming. "You really did it." They embraced, both crying now, years of struggle momentarily forgotten in the promise of what lay ahead. "We can move to a better place," Raj said, already making plans. "Somewhere closer to the university, with proper ventilation for your health." His mother shook her head. "The scholarship is for your education, not for me. Save your internship money. You'll need it." But Raj was insistent. By the end of the month, they had moved to a small but clean two-room apartment halfway between the university and the city center. His mother's cough improved in the new environment, and Raj prepared for his summer internship at Horizon Tech. On his first day, wearing new clothes bought specially for the occasion, Raj entered the gleaming glass headquarters of Horizon Tech. The security guard looked him up and down suspiciously until Raj showed his internship badge. Even then, the man directed him to the service entrance rather than the main lobby. "I'm an intern, not maintenance staff," Raj said quietly but firmly, standing his ground. The guard checked his paperwork again and reluctantly pointed him toward the main entrance. It was a small moment, but one that Raj would remember, a reminder that despite his scholarship and internship, many would still see him as an outsider. Inside, he was assigned to the mobile development team, working directly under Arjun Kumar, a brilliant but demanding project lead. The first week was brutal. Having learned programming mostly through free online resources and limited school classes, Raj found himself behind the other interns, all of whom came from privileged backgrounds and prestigious schools. "You're going to have to work twice as hard to keep up," Arjun told him bluntly after reviewing his first code submission. "Your algorithm is clever but unrefined. Your approach shows promise but lacks structure." Instead of being discouraged, Raj took the criticism as a challenge. He stayed hours after the other interns left, watching tutorial videos and practicing coding techniques. He packed simple lunches to eat at his desk rather than joining the others at expensive nearby restaurants. By the third week, Arjun was assigning him more complex tasks. By the sixth week, Raj was contributing features that actually made it into the company's products. "Where did you learn to think like this?" Arjun asked one evening, reviewing a particularly elegant solution Raj had developed for a customer authentication problem. "Your approach is unorthodox but incredibly efficient. When you have limited resources, you learn to maximize what you have," Raj replied simply. Then came the day Raj walked into the elevator and found himself standing next to Vikram. His former classmate was dressed in an expensive suit, a visitor badge clipped to his lapel. "What are you doing here?" Vikram asked, clearly surprised. "I work here," Raj answered. "Summer internship." "What about you?" Vikram straightened his tie. "My father is meeting with the board about a potential acquisition. He wants me to start learning the family business." The elevator doors opened to the executive floor, and Vikram stepped out. "Don't work too hard in the coding sweatshop," he called back with a smirk. "Some of us are meant for the boardroom, not the basement." The comment stung, but Raj pushed it aside. He had more important things to focus on than Vikram's insults. As the summer drew to a close, Arjun called Raj into a meeting with the department director. Raj entered nervously, expecting a routine evaluation of his internship performance. "We want to offer you a part-time position while you complete your studies," the director said without preamble. "Your work has been exceptional, and we'd like to continue investing in your development." The offer included flexible hours around his university schedule and pay that would cover his living expenses. It was more than Raj had dared to hope for. Additionally, Arjun added, "We'd like you to continue developing your community skills marketplace app under our Innovation Incubator program. We believe it has commercial potential." Raj's app, which had started as a way to help his mother and other tailors find work, would now have the backing of one of the country's leading tech companies. The possibilities seemed endless. University classes began the following month. Raj found himself in a new world of lectures, laboratories, and study groups. Though he still felt like an outsider among students who had attended elite schools and traveled abroad, his confidence was growing. His programming professor, Dr. Gupta, quickly recognized his talent. "Your practical experience gives you an advantage," she told him after he aced the first assessment. "Most students here know theory but have never built anything real." Juggling part-time work at Horizon Tech with his studies proved challenging. Some nights, Raj slept only 3 or 4 hours before waking to complete assignments. But the exhaustion felt different from the bone-deep weariness of poverty. This was the tiredness of progress, of moving forward. His mother's health continued to improve, and she found work with a boutique clothing designer who valued her meticulous stitching. For the first time in their lives, they had a small savings account growing month by month. 6 months into his university studies, Raj was invited to a special innovation showcase at Horizon Tech. Each team from the incubator program would present their projects to the company executives and potential investors. The night before the presentation, Raj received a text message from Arjun: "Board members will be there tomorrow. Vikram's father included. Be prepared." Raj stayed up all night perfecting his presentation. The community skills marketplace had evolved considerably with Horizon's resources behind it. What had begun as a simple app connecting tailors with customers now encompassed dozens of skill categories across 3 cities, with over 10,000 registered service providers. The following day, dressed in the best clothes he could afford, Raj waited his turn to present. From the side of the stage, he could see Vikram sitting next to his father in the front row, both looking bored as they checked their expensive watches. When his name was called, Raj walked to the podium with steady steps. As he looked out at the audience of executives and investors, he caught Vikram's eye. His former bully seemed startled to see him there, presenting a project rather than serving coffee or managing technical support. Raj took a deep breath and began to speak. "What if I told you that there's an untapped workforce of millions of skilled individuals just waiting to be connected with those who need their services?" As he outlined the potential of his marketplace, showing real data from their pilot programs, Raj noticed something change in the audience. People were leaning forward. They were taking notes. Even Vikram's father had put his phone down and was watching intently. By the time Raj finished his presentation, the energy in the room had transformed. Hands shot up during the Q&A session, not with skeptical questions but with eager inquiries about expansion plans and revenue projections. Afterwards, as Raj gathered his materials, he was surrounded by executives offering business cards and congratulations. From the corner of his eye, he saw Vikram's father gesture to his son, pointing toward Raj with an expression of grudging respect. The boy they had laughed at for being poor was now commanding the attention of the very people they had always assumed would only see him as a servant. It wasn't revenge Raj felt in that moment, but something more powerful: vindication. His worth had never been defined by his poverty, and now everyone in that room knew it too. The weeks following the innovation showcase transformed Raj's project from a promising startup into a serious business venture. Horizon Tech CEO himself, Mr. Mehta, had approached Raj afterward with a proposition. The company would provide full funding to spin off the community skills marketplace as its own subsidiary, with Raj as project lead despite still being a university student. "This isn't charity," Mr. Mehta had said firmly when Raj expressed disbelief. "Your platform addresses a massive market opportunity that larger companies have overlooked. We believe this could be extremely profitable while creating meaningful social impact." The contract they offered included a salary that made Raj's eyes widen and an equity stake that could make him wealthy if the company succeeded. His mother had wept when he showed her the paperwork, unable to believe how quickly their fortunes had changed. "You deserve this," she told him, squeezing his hand. "No one has worked harder." The reality of running a startup while completing his degree meant Raj's life became a relentless cycle of work, study, and brief periods of exhausted sleep. He assembled a small team, moving into dedicated office space within Horizon Tech's building. Early mornings and late nights became his routine as he balanced coursework with business development. His app, now officially branded as SkillBridge, expanded rapidly across 5 cities, then 10. Local news outlets began running stories about tailors, plumbers, electricians, and house painters whose incomes had doubled or tripled through the platform. What had begun as a way to help his mother had evolved into something that was changing thousands of lives. Not everyone was happy about SkillBridge's success. Traditional employment agencies and middlemen who had previously taken large cuts from workers' wages began to see their business models threatened. Some larger tech companies, including one owned by Vikram's father, launched competing services, though these lacked the authentic connection with service providers that gave SkillBridge its edge. Halfway through his second year of university, Raj was invited to speak at a national technology conference. Standing at the podium in front of industry leaders, government officials, and aspiring entrepreneurs, he shared the journey from his one-room home to the stage where he now stood. Technology should serve everyone, not just those who can afford the latest gadgets, he told the audience. The greatest innovations often come from understanding problems that affect the majority of people, not just the privileged few. His speech received a standing ovation. As he stepped away from the microphone, he noticed Vikram's father in the audience, watching him thoughtfully. Later, at the reception, the older man approached him. "That was quite impressive," he said, extending his hand. "My son showed poor judgment in how he treated you. I hope you'll accept my apology on his behalf." Raj shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, sir. But perhaps your son should make his own apologies." The man raised an eyebrow, then nodded slowly. "A fair point. I've raised him with every advantage, but perhaps that's part of the problem. He lacks your perspective." They spoke briefly about SkillBridge's growth before the man handed Raj his business card. "If you ever consider a strategic partnership, my door is open. Sometimes competitors can accomplish more as allies." As Raj's final year of university approached, SkillBridge had grown to a team of 30 employees serving 15 cities across the country. The small basement office had been replaced by an entire floor in a modern building. Magazine profiles described Raj as a rising star in the tech industry and the face of inclusive innovation. Yet despite his growing success, Raj maintained his focus and humility. He still lived in the same modest apartment with his mother, though he had renovated it completely for her comfort. He continued attending classes diligently, determined to complete his degree with honors despite his business responsibilities. One afternoon, as Raj conducted interviews for new developers, his assistant interrupted with an urgent message. "Horizon Tech's board is meeting right now," she said, looking concerned. "Mr. Mehta asked if you could join immediately." When Raj arrived at the boardroom, the tension was palpable. Mr. Mehta looked grim as he gestured for Raj to take a seat. "We have a situation," he explained once the doors were closed. "Innovate Global has launched a hostile takeover attempt of Horizon Tech." Raj felt a chill. Innovate Global was Vikram's father's company, a tech conglomerate that had been aggressively acquiring smaller firms over the past year. "They've acquired enough shares to force a board vote next month," Mr. Mehta continued. "If they succeed, they'll likely dismantle our company and absorb the profitable divisions." "What about SkillBridge?" Raj asked, immediately concerned for his team and the platform they'd built. "That's partly why I wanted you here," Mr. Mehta said. "Their filing specifically mentions plans to restructure underperforming social innovation initiatives. SkillBridge would almost certainly be shut down or stripped for parts." The news hit Raj hard. Everything he'd built could be destroyed by Vikram's father in a corporate power play. "What can we do?" he asked. For the next hour, the board discussed strategies for fighting the takeover. They could seek a friendly investor, a white knight, to help them maintain independence. They could attempt to buy back shares, though this would stretch their finances dangerously thin. Or they could try to convince shareholders that Horizon's current management offered better long-term value. "We need something that demonstrates Horizon's unique value and future potential," said one board member. "Something shareholders won't want to lose in a takeover." Slowly, all eyes turned to Raj. Skillbridge was Horizon's fastest-growing division, with projections showing it could become their most profitable business unit within 2 years. "We need you to accelerate your expansion plans," Mr. Mehta said. "Show investors why Horizon's approach to innovation is worth protecting." The responsibility was enormous. Raj had just turned 21, was still months away from completing his degree, and now held the fate of a major company partially in his hands. If Skillbridge failed to impress investors, hundreds of jobs, including those of people who had mentored and supported him, would be lost. He thought of his mother, who had worked her fingers raw to give him opportunities. He thought of Mr. Patel at the repair shop, who had taught him valuable skills when no one else would. He thought of Mr. Sharma, his high school teacher who had encouraged him to enter the competition that changed his life. And he thought of Vikram, whose contempt had once made him doubt his own worth. "I'll need additional resources," Raj said finally. "And complete autonomy to implement some unorthodox strategies." The board exchanged glances before Mr. Mehta nodded. "You'll have whatever you need. But we're working against the clock. The shareholders vote in 6 weeks." As Raj left the boardroom, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Heard about the takeover attempt. Perhaps we should talk." "Vikram." Raj stared at the screen, surprised that his former bully would reach out now. Was it a sincere offer to help, or was Vikram playing some role in his father's plans? Either way, Raj realized, the dynamics between them had shifted dramatically. Vikram was no longer the untouchable rich boy looking down on the poor student. They were now players in the same high-stakes game. With determination in his step, Raj headed back to the Skillbridge office. He had 6 weeks to save not only his own company but the organization that had given him his chance. 6 weeks to prove that his vision for technology that served everyone was not just idealistic but economically powerful. The boy who had once studied by the light of a single bulb now carried the future of a corporation on his shoulders. And deep down, despite the pressure, he welcomed the challenge. Raj stared at Vikram's message for a long moment before putting his phone away without replying. Whatever game his former classmate was playing, Raj couldn't afford distractions. He had a company to save. The next morning, he gathered his team in Skillbridge's conference room. Though tempted to shield them from the stress, he knew transparency was essential. "Horizon Tech is facing a hostile takeover," he explained, watching their expressions shift from confusion to concern. "If it succeeds, Skillbridge will likely be shut down or completely restructured." A heavy silence fell over the room. Many of his employees came from backgrounds similar to his own, people with talent but limited opportunities until Skillbridge had given them a chance. "What do we do?" asked Priya, who had joined the company after graduating from their high school. Once his only defender against Vikram's bullying, she was now his head of operations. "We fight," Raj said simply. "We have 6 weeks to show investors that Horizon Tech's approach, our approach, creates more value than a corporate takeover." He outlined an ambitious plan, accelerating their expansion to 5 new cities, launching new service categories, and implementing an upgraded platform that would dramatically improve user experience. What would normally be a 6-month project, they would attempt in just over a month. "It's impossible," one developer said, looking at the timeline. "Perhaps," Raj acknowledged. "But sitting back and accepting defeat is definitely impossible." The team worked around the clock, fueled by a mixture of determination and fear. Raj led by example, often sleeping on the office couch rather than going home. When exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them, he reminded everyone what was at stake, not just their jobs, but the livelihoods of thousands of service providers who depended on Skillbridge to connect with clients. 2 weeks into their sprint, as Raj reviewed code late one night, his phone rang. It was Vikram again. "You never answered my message," Vikram said without preamble. "I've been busy," Raj replied coolly. "What do you want?" "To meet. Just once. I have information you might find valuable about my father's plans." Raj hesitated. Was this a trap or a genuine offer? Either way, intelligence about the enemy's strategy could be useful. "Tomorrow morning, the coffee shop across from your office," Raj suggested. 7 a.m. "I'll be there." The coffee shop was nearly empty when Raj arrived the next day. Vikram was already seated in a corner booth, looking different from how Raj remembered him. The arrogant posture was gone, replaced by something more subdued. "Thanks for coming," Vikram said as Raj sat down. "What's this about?" Raj asked, getting straight to the point. Vikram sighed. "My father's takeover plan. It's not just business, it's personal. He's been obsessed with acquiring Horizon ever since your presentation at the Innovation Showcase. Your success made him question his own business model. So he wants to shut us down?" "He wants to control you," Vikram corrected. "He sees SkillBridge as potentially lucrative, but he wants it reshaped in his image, focused purely on profit, not social impact." Raj studied his former bully carefully. "Why are you telling me this? Aren't you part of your father's company now?" Vikram looked away. "I was. Until last month when I questioned this takeover strategy. He removed me from my position. Said I wasn't ruthless enough for the business world." The irony wasn't lost on Raj. The boy who had tormented him for being poor was now considered too soft by his own father. "I still don't understand why you're helping me," Raj pressed. "Because you were right," Vikram admitted, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "At school, at the competition, about SkillBridge. Your vision actually helps people while making money. My father's approach just makes money while exploiting people." Raj wasn't fully convinced, but Vikram's next words caught his attention. "He's planning to sweeten talk key shareholders before the vote. He's got a list of the 10 investors whose support would swing the decision, and he's meeting them personally. But there's one he doesn't know about yet, Mrs. Kapoor. She inherited her husband's shares last month, and the paperwork hasn't been processed. My father thinks Mr. Kapoor is still the shareholder." Mrs. Kapoor. Raj suddenly remembered the name, an elderly client of his mother's from years ago, who had always been kind to them despite being wealthy. "How large is her stake?" Raj asked. 7%. Potentially enough to tip the balance. After their meeting, Raj sat alone, thinking through his options. If Vikram was telling the truth, reaching Mrs. Kapoor before Vikram's father did could be crucial. But this would require a personal approach, not corporate negotiations. That evening, Raj visited his mother. "Mrs. Kapoor from the Hill Road house?" "Of course I remember her," his mother said when he asked. "I still alter her clothes occasionally. Her husband passed away recently, poor woman." "Would she remember me?" Raj asked. His mother smiled. "She used to give you sweets when you came with me for fittings. She was always asking about your studies." The next day, instead of going to the office, Raj accompanied his mother to Mrs. Kapoor's mansion. The elderly woman received them warmly in her garden, clearly delighted to see them both. "Look at you," she exclaimed, examining Raj. "Your mother told me about your success, but seeing you now, so grown up and professional." Over tea and homemade sweets, Raj explained the situation honestly, including SkillBridge's mission and the threat of the hostile takeover. "I remember reading about your company in the newspaper," Mrs. Kapoor said thoughtfully. "My housekeeper found work through your app after her husband fell ill. She says it saved her family. We've helped thousands of people like her," Raj said. "But if Innovate Global takes over, that focus will be lost." Mrs. Kapoor set down her teacup. My husband always believed in investing in companies with both financial returns and social benefits. I've been unsure what to do with his shares since his passing. She didn't commit to anything that day, but she promised to review the materials Raj left and speak with her financial advisor. As the weeks passed, Raj's team made remarkable progress on their accelerated timeline. The new version of SkillBridge launched in 3 additional cities, with 2 more preparing to go live the following week. User numbers were growing exponentially, and media coverage of their expansion was overwhelmingly positive. Horizon Tech's stock price had begun to climb as news of SkillBridge's success spread, making the takeover more expensive for Innovate Global. But according to Raj's sources, Vikram's father remained determined, continuing to court key shareholders. 3 days before the board vote, Raj received a letter delivered by courier. Inside was a single sheet of premium stationery with elegant handwriting. Dear Raj, after careful consideration and discussions with my advisors, I have decided to vote against the proposed takeover of Horizon Tech. Your vision for SkillBridge aligns with my late husband's values and my own. Sincerely, Anita Kapoor. P.S. My housekeeper's daughter is looking for work in your technology department. She has just completed her computer science degree. I've enclosed her resume. Raj smiled as he read the letter. Mrs. Kapoor's support might be enough to tip the scales, but they couldn't rely on it alone. The next 3 days would be critical in determining whether everything he had built would survive. That evening, as Raj worked late finalizing his presentation for the shareholders, his phone buzzed with another message from Vikram: "We need to talk again. Urgently. My father has changed tactics." The battle for Horizon Tech was entering its final phase, with Raj caught in the center of a corporate war he never imagined being part of. Whatever came next, he was determined to fight not just for his company, but for the vision of technology that served everyone, not just the privileged few who had once looked down on him. Raj met Vikram at midnight in an all-night diner far from both their offices. The place was nearly empty, just a few taxi drivers having coffee between shifts and a waitress scrolling on her phone behind the counter. My father discovered Mrs. Kapoor's new ownership of the shares, Vikram said without preamble, his voice low. He's arranged a meeting with her tomorrow morning. Raj felt a rush of anxiety. How did he find out? Someone in the records department tipped him off when the transfer was finally processed, Vikram explained. But that's not the worst part. He's planning to use personal leverage against you. What kind of leverage? Vikram hesitated. He's hired investigators to dig into your past, your family, your business practices, looking for anything he can use. They've been interviewing people from your old neighborhood, former classmates, even checking your university records. The invasion of privacy made Raj's stomach turn. What could he possibly find? I've never hidden where I came from. It's not about finding actual wrongdoing, Vikram said, stirring his untouched coffee. It's about creating doubt, raising questions that shareholders will worry about before the vote. A memory surfaced in Raj's mind, a minor incident during his first year at university when he'd helped a friend complete an assignment while sick. The professor had questioned the similarity in their work but ultimately accepted that they had collaborated legitimately. Could something so small be twisted into an accusation of academic dishonesty? Why are you really helping me? Raj asked suddenly. This is your father we're talking about. Vikram looked up, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. Because I'm tired of who I became around him. The way I treated you in school, that was me trying to be him. He paused. When he threw me out of the company, I finally saw clearly what he'd been grooming me to become. Before Raj could respond, Vikram slid a flash drive across the table. This contains his complete strategy for the takeover, including the points he plans to raise with Mrs. Kapoor and the other shareholders. I downloaded it from the company server before he revoked my access. This is corporate espionage, Raj said, not touching the drive. It's the truth, Vikram countered. Use it however you think is right. Raj left the diner with the flash drive heavy in his pocket and even heavier questions weighing on his mind. Using the information felt wrong, yet ignoring it could mean the end of everything he'd built. At home, his mother was still awake despite the late hour, sewing decorative embroidery on a wedding dress. "What troubles you?" she asked, seeing his expression. Raj sat beside her and explained the situation. His mother had always been his moral compass, her integrity unshaken even through their hardest times. In the old neighborhood, she said thoughtfully, there was a saying, when confronting a poisonous snake, one need not become venomous to survive. She set down her needlework. This man attacks from the shadows because he fears facing you directly. Perhaps the light is your best weapon. The next morning, instead of going into the office, Raj visited Mrs. Kapoor again. This time he came alone and explained everything, including Vikram's warning about his father's visit. "He will likely tell you things about me, my background, perhaps even suggest improprieties," Raj said honestly. "I wanted you to hear from me first that I've never hidden where I came from or who I am." Mrs. Kapoor listened carefully before responding. "My dear boy, do you know why I've always had such affection for you and your mother?" She smiled at his puzzled expression. "Because I recognize the journey. My late husband came from nothing, a small village with no electricity or running water. He built his fortune through honest work and treating people fairly." She patted his hand. "When this man comes to see me, I'll know exactly what kind of businessman he is by what he chooses to say about you." Returning to the office, Raj called an emergency meeting with Horizon Tech's senior management team. Instead of just defending against the takeover, he proposed a bold counteroffensive: complete transparency. "We release everything," he explained. "My background, our full business model, our social impact metrics alongside our financial data. We show shareholders exactly what they're protecting by rejecting the takeover." Mr. Mehta looked skeptical. "Raj, I appreciate the sentiment, but corporate battles aren't usually won through idealism." "This isn't idealism," Raj insisted. "It's strategic differentiation. Innovate Global wants to paint us as naive do-gooders who don't understand real business. We need to show that our approach, serving underrepresented communities, creating economic opportunities, isn't just socially valuable but financially sound." After hours of debate, the management team agreed to Raj's approach. That evening, Horizon Tech published a comprehensive report documenting their business philosophy, complete with Raj's personal story of rising from poverty. Rather than hiding his humble beginnings, the report celebrated how his experiences had shaped SkillBridge's unique market position. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Business publications ran features on Horizon's innovative approach. Social media buzzed with testimonials from service providers whose lives had been transformed by SkillBridge. Even financial analysts began questioning whether Innovate Global's traditional approach was becoming outdated in a market increasingly concerned with social impact. 2 days before the shareholder vote, Raj received a call from Mrs. Kapoor. "Your competitor visited this morning," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "He spent 30 minutes explaining why a boy from the slums shouldn't be trusted with corporate responsibility before I showed him the door." Raj winced. "I'm sorry you had to endure that." "Don't be. It confirmed everything I needed to know," she replied. "I've been calling other shareholders. Many feel as I do, that Horizon's approach represents the future of business, not the past." The morning of the vote arrived with tension hanging over Horizon Tech's headquarters. Shareholders began arriving early, greeted by protesters outside, service providers from SkillBridge holding signs supporting the company that had changed their lives. Raj stood at the entrance alongside Mr. Mehta, greeting each shareholder personally. When Vikram's father arrived, flanked by lawyers, he barely acknowledged Raj's extended hand. "A nice performance," he said coldly. "But sentimentality doesn't build lasting businesses." Neither does exploitation, Raj replied quietly. Inside the meeting room, presentations from both sides laid out their visions for Horizon Tech's future. Innovate Global emphasized traditional metrics, cost-cutting, efficiency, market consolidation. Raj spoke last. His presentation focused on how SkillBridge's approach had opened entirely new markets and customer segments that traditional companies had ignored. The choice today isn't between profit and purpose, he concluded. It's between a limited vision of business that serves the few, and an expanded vision that serves many while generating stronger returns. As the shareholders filed out to cast their votes, Vikram appeared unexpectedly in the hallway. He nodded silently to Raj before disappearing into the crowd. The counting took nearly an hour. When the corporate secretary finally emerged with the results, the room fell silent. The shareholders have voted to reject the acquisition offer from Innovate Global, she announced. Horizon Tech will remain independent. A cheer erupted from the Horizon Tech employees gathered outside the boardroom. As congratulations flowed around him, Raj caught sight of Vikram's father storming toward the exit, his face dark with fury. The victory was exhilarating, but Raj knew it was just the beginning. Innovate Global would likely attempt another takeover in the future, and other challenges would emerge. Yet something fundamental had shifted, not just in the corporate landscape, but in how Raj viewed himself and his purpose. That evening, as celebrations continued at Horizon Tech, Raj slipped away to visit his mother. Together they sat on the small balcony of their apartment, looking out at the city lights. "Are you happy with your victory?" she asked softly. Raj considered the question carefully. "I'm grateful," he said finally. "Not just for winning, but for everything that brought me here, even the difficult parts." His phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Mehta. "Board meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. We need to discuss your role in Horizon's future. The chairman has something significant to propose." Whatever came next, Raj knew one thing with certainty: the journey that had begun in poverty had equipped him with perspective and resilience that no business school could teach. The path forward would require both. Raj arrived at Horizon Tech's headquarters early the next morning, before most employees. The building was quiet, giving him time to reflect on the whirlwind of events. Just a few years ago, he had been studying by the light of a single bulb in a one-room home. Now he was entering the boardroom of a major technology company that he had helped save from hostile takeover. When he entered the conference room, he was surprised to find not just Mr. Mehta and the board members, but also several major shareholders, including Mrs. Kapoor. They all stood as he entered, an unexpected show of respect that momentarily left him speechless. "Please, sit down," said Mr. Mehta, gesturing to an empty chair. "We have significant matters to discuss." Once everyone was seated, the chairman of the board, Mr. Sharma, no relation to his former teacher, cleared his throat. Yesterday's vote was more than a rejection of Innovate Global's takeover attempt. It was an endorsement of Horizon Tech's vision, a vision that you, Raj, have helped shape through SkillBridge. Mr. Sharma slid a document across the table. "The board has unanimously voted to restructure our executive leadership. We're creating a new position, Chief Innovation Officer, with oversight of all product development, including SkillBridge and our other social impact initiatives." Raj looked down at the paper, which outlined the responsibilities and compensation for this new role. The salary figure made him blink twice to ensure he wasn't misreading it. "We want you for this position," Mr. Mehta said simply. "Despite your youth, you've demonstrated exceptional business acumen and leadership ability." "But," Raj began, "I haven't even completed my degree yet." Mrs. Kapoor spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. "My husband never finished university. He always said that real-world success was a more valuable education than any degree." "We'd support you in completing your studies," Mr. Mehta added. "But we need your voice in our executive suite now, not after graduation." Raj looked around the table at faces filled with expectation and, surprisingly, respect. These were industry veterans, people with decades more experience than him, yet they were offering him a seat at the highest levels of corporate leadership. "I'll need time to think about this," he said finally. "It's a tremendous opportunity, but also a tremendous responsibility." "Of course," the chairman nodded. "We'll need your answer by next week. The markets are watching Horizon closely after yesterday's events." As Raj left the meeting, his phone buzzed with a message from an unexpected source. "Vikram. Heard about the CIO offer. Congratulations. Coffee sometime?" The message left Raj conflicted. Their recent interactions had suggested Vikram was changing, but years of bullying and contempt weren't easily forgotten. Still, Raj understood better than most that people deserved the chance to evolve beyond their past mistakes. He texted back, "Thanks. Coffee next week perhaps." That evening, Raj visited his mother again, bringing dinner from her favorite restaurant. As they ate, he told her about the job offer. "They want to make me an executive," he said, still sounding surprised himself. "At 22, before I've even graduated." His mother set down her fork, studying his face. "You don't seem happy about this honor." "I'm grateful," Raj clarified. "It's just, everything's happening so fast. 3 years ago I was just trying to get enough credits for a scholarship, and now they want me helping run a corporation." She smiled gently. "You've always carried more responsibility than others your age. Remember when you were 10 and negotiated with the landlord when I was sick?" Raj smiled at the memory. During his mother's brief hospitalization for pneumonia, he had somehow convinced their stern landlord to defer their rent payment without penalty. "My concern isn't whether you can handle the responsibility," she continued. "It's whether this is truly what you want." "What do you mean?" She carefully wiped her hands on a napkin. "You started SkillBridge to help people like me, people with valuable skills but limited opportunities. Does becoming a corporate executive serve that purpose, or does it take you away from it?" It was a profound question that Raj pondered long after returning to his apartment. By morning, he had his answer. The following week, Raj met with the board again. This time, he brought his own proposal. "I'm honored by your offer," he began. "But I believe I can provide more value to Horizon Tech in a different capacity." He outlined his vision. Instead of becoming Chief Innovation Officer overseeing all products, he wanted to lead a new division focused specifically on inclusive technology, with SkillBridge as its flagship product but with resources to develop other platforms serving underrepresented communities. "The market response to our transparent approach during the takeover fight proves there's appetite for technology that balances profit with social impact," he explained. "Rather than trying to retrofit this philosophy into existing products, let's build a division around it from the ground up." The board members exchanged glances, some skeptical, others intrigued. "And your role in this division?" Mr. Mehta asked. "I want to be its president," Raj said confidently. "With the autonomy to build a team and develop products, but still reporting to the executive leadership." After a brief discussion among themselves, Mr. Sharma nodded. "It's an interesting counterproposal. Give us a week to consider it." 7 days later, Horizon Tech announced the formation of a new division, Horizon Impact Technologies, with Raj appointed as its president. The stock market responded favorably, with analysts noting the company's strategic positioning at the intersection of technology and social responsibility, an increasingly important consideration for investors. On his first day in the new role, Raj arrived at the office to find his team had decorated his door with a hand-drawn sign, "From single light bulb to lighting the way." The gesture brought unexpected tears to his eyes. His assistant handed him a stack of messages as he entered, including one from Mr. Patel, his former employer at the electronics repair shop. "Saw you in the business section. So proud of you, boy. My shop needs a new computer system, maybe your company can help an old man?" Raj smiled, making a note to visit his former mentor personally. Another message came from his university dean, offering a flexible schedule to complete his remaining coursework. The note ended, "Your success is inspiring our other students from similar backgrounds. Would you consider giving a guest lecture next semester?" As Raj settled into his new office, larger than the entire home he'd grown up in, he placed 2 photos on his desk. One showed him and his mother outside their old one-room house. The other was the newspaper clipping of his first tech competition win. Together, they reminded him of where he'd come from and why it mattered. His first meeting as division president was scheduled for 10 a.m., a strategy session to plan Horizon Impact's initial projects beyond SkillBridge. As Raj reviewed the attendee list, one name caught his attention: Vikram Singh, listed as external consultant. After their coffee meeting the previous week, Raj had been surprised by Vikram's insights into how traditional businesses like his father's overlooked potential markets. Despite their complicated history, Vikram's perspective as someone who had seen both worlds, privileged corporate leadership and recent humbling, could be valuable. The meeting would be the true test of whether their newfound professional relationship could overcome their past. It would also be Raj's first major decision as a corporate leader, whether to extend an opportunity to someone who had once deemed him unworthy of basic respect. As his team began filing into the conference room, Raj straightened his tie, a gift from his mother to mark his new position. He was no longer just the boy from the slums proving his worth. He was now a business leader with the power to shape opportunities for others. How he wielded that power would define not just his career, but his character. With that thought firmly in mind, Raj stepped into the conference room, ready to begin the next chapter of his remarkable journey. 5 years later. The headquarters of Horizon Impact Technologies occupied 3 floors of a modern glass building in the heart of the city. From his corner office, Raj could see both the gleaming high-rises of the business district and, in the distance, the neighborhood where he had grown up. The contrast no longer represented an unbridgeable divide but rather a journey, his journey. At 27, Raj had become one of the most recognized young business leaders in the country. Under his guidance, Horizon Impact had expanded from SkillBridge to a portfolio of 8 platforms, each addressing different needs in underserved communities: education access for rural students, healthcare coordination for low-income families, microfinancing for small entrepreneurs, and more. "Your 10 a.m. is here," his assistant announced through the intercom. Raj straightened his tie, still a habit even though he had long since grown comfortable in executive settings. "Send them in." The door opened to reveal a group of university students, eyes wide as they took in the office. They were participants in Horizon Impact's mentorship program, which Raj had established specifically for young people from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. "Welcome," Raj said warmly, moving from behind his desk to greet them. "Please, make yourselves comfortable." As the students introduced themselves, Raj noticed one young woman who remained quiet, her worn clothing and hesitant demeanor reminding him powerfully of himself just a few years earlier. "And you are?" he asked gently. "Deepa," she replied, her voice barely audible. "I'm studying computer science at City College." Deepa created an amazing algorithm for our group project, volunteered one of the other students. "But she won't take credit for it." Raj nodded, remembering his own early reluctance to claim his accomplishments. "Sometimes the most innovative thinking comes from those who've had to solve real problems with limited resources," he said, directing his words to Deepa. "That was certainly true in my case." For the next hour, Raj shared his story with the students, not the polished version from magazine profiles, but the raw truth of poverty, prejudice, and perseverance. He showed them the photo he still kept on his desk, him and his mother outside their one-room home. "Success isn't about escaping your origins," he told them. "It's about transforming the lessons from those experiences into value for others." After the students left, Raj had 30 minutes before his next meeting. He used the time to call his mother, now living in a comfortable house he had bought for her. Though he had offered her a life of luxury, she had insisted on a modest home, continuing to work as a tailor, now teaching her skills to younger women through a program funded by Horizon Impact. "How are you, Ma?" he asked when she answered. "Busy and happy," she replied, the sounds of chatter and sewing machines in the background. "We just received a large order from that boutique hotel. 15 girls are working on it." Raj smiled, knowing that his mother found purpose not in material comfort but in creating opportunities for others, just as she had always done for him. "And your big meeting today?" she asked. "Are you nervous?" "A little," he admitted. "It's the biggest decision we've made since starting the division." "You'll make the right choice," she said confidently. After they hung up, Raj went to the main conference room where his executive team was gathering. On the table lay documents representing months of negotiation, the proposed acquisition of Innovate Global's social technology division. Yes, Innovate Global, Vikram's father's company, which had once tried to destroy SkillBridge. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, especially since Vikram himself now served as Raj's chief strategy officer at Horizon Impact. Their unlikely partnership had begun with that first consultation 5 years ago and had gradually evolved into genuine friendship and professional respect. Vikram had eventually broken completely with his father, choosing to work with Raj in building technology that balanced profit with purpose. "Everyone's here," said Vikram, entering the room. "Including my father's representatives." The older Singh had refused to attend personally, still bitter about his failed takeover and his son's betrayal. Instead, he had sent his legal and financial teams to finalize the sale of the division he deemed unprofitable under current market conditions. What he didn't realize, or refused to acknowledge, was that the social technology division was struggling precisely because Innovate Global approached it with the wrong mindset. Under Horizon Impact's leadership, those same products and services could thrive. As the meeting progressed, Raj watched the Innovate Global executives present their division's assets with barely concealed disdain for the charity work they were offloading. They clearly viewed this as dumping a liability. "Any questions before we proceed to signing?" asked Innovate's lead attorney, clearly eager to conclude the transaction. "Just one," Raj said, leaning forward. "The employees of this division, all 342 of them according to your documentation, what provisions have been made for them?" The executives exchanged glances. "That's at the acquiring company's discretion," one answered smoothly. "Most acquisitions involve some streamlining of personnel." "I see," Raj nodded thoughtfully. He opened a folder and slid a document across the table. "Then you should review our revised offer." The Innovate team looked confused as they examined the paper. "This is the same financial figure we agreed upon," the lead executive said. "Yes," Raj confirmed. "But you'll notice Clause 17 has been modified. We're requiring a guarantee that all current employees will be retained for a minimum of 1 year, with performance reviews before any staffing decisions." "That's highly unusual," protested the attorney. "It limits your operational flexibility." Raj met the man's gaze steadily. "These are people's livelihoods, not just numbers on a spreadsheet. Many of these employees have families depending on them, just as my mother depended on her sewing work when I was growing up." He glanced at Vikram, who nodded in support before addressing the Innovate team. "My father taught me that business is about maximizing profit at any cost. Raj taught me that true success balances profit with human dignity. You can guess which approach has made me prouder of my work." For a tense moment, it seemed the deal might collapse. Then, reluctantly, the Innovate representatives initialed the revised clause. Within the hour, the acquisition was complete. Horizon Impact had just doubled its size and expanded its reach significantly. As the Innovate team departed, Vikram turned to Raj. "You know what this means, don't you? You now effectively control a portion of my father's former empire. The boy he once had thrown out of his building for looking like a beggar is now his business rival." Raj shook his head. "That's not why we did this." "I know," Vikram acknowledged. But it's still poetic justice. Later that afternoon, as the news of the acquisition hit the financial press, Raj received an unexpected visitor. The security desk called up, "Sir, there's a Mr. Patel here to see you. He says he's an old friend." Moments later, the door opened to reveal Mr. Patel from the electronics repair shop, older now, his hair fully gray, but his eyes still bright with intelligence. Raj rose immediately, greeting him with a warm embrace. "I thought it was time I saw this empire you've built," Mr. Patel said, looking around the office with undisguised pride. "From fixing phones in my little shop to this, I always knew you were destined for great things. Everything I learned about technology and business started in your shop," Raj said sincerely. "You gave me a chance when no one else would." They talked for an hour, reminiscing about the days when Raj would work late into the evening, learning to repair increasingly complex devices. Before leaving, Mr. Patel handed Raj a small package wrapped in faded newspaper. "I kept this all these years," he said. "The first circuit board you successfully repaired. I thought you might want it for your fancy office, a reminder of your first success." That evening, after most employees had gone home, Raj placed the framed circuit board on his office wall opposite his prestigious business awards and degrees. To him, it represented something just as valuable, the belief someone had shown in him when he most needed it. His phone buzzed with a message from Deepa, the quiet student from the morning's mentorship meeting. "Thank you for sharing your story. Today I submitted my project with my name on it." Raj smiled, feeling the full circle of his journey. From being the one who needed a chance to the one who could offer opportunities to others, he had transformed not just his own life but created a ripple effect that continued to spread. Outside his window, the city lights began to shine as dusk fell. Somewhere in those lights were countless others like him, people with talent and determination held back only by circumstance. His work, he realized, was far from finished. As he packed his bag to head home, Raj reflected on the path that had brought him here. The poverty and ridicule he had faced hadn't defined him, but they had shaped him, giving him perspective and purpose that could never have come from privilege alone. The boy they had laughed at for being poor hadn't just become their boss. He had become something more important, a bridge between two worlds and a catalyst for change, proving that true success wasn't measured by wealth alone but by the lives improved along the way. And that, Raj knew, was just the beginning.